And we are back with part 4, the final part in our post-patch meta formations video series. We did not originally think this would go this long. However, there are a lot of formations and a lot of important information I wanted to share with you so that you can make the best decision when choosing the formations you want to start your post-patch era with. So with that being said, let's get into these formations. Starting with the 4-3-2-1, which is a unique variation of the 4-3-3, in which there are two central attacking midfielders, right, two cams, instead of a left winger and a right winger. And when choosing if you want to utilize this formation or not, you simply have to compare the duties for the cams to the duties of the left winger and right winger, right? Whichever one works best for you, or if either one works best for you, give that a go in game. But other than that, the way this sets up is exactly the same as any of the 4-3-3 variations, right? The central midfielders are obviously in that base flat setup that I really like for the defensive purposes in the UFL in particular. Having 3 CMs linear like that, as I've said in previous videos, creates an easy way to constantly switch between those players and tweak them to be in the best defensive position. So, like I said, just go in, see if the cam duties are better suited than the winger duties, and if so, this could be a great formation for you. Next, we have a very dynamic attacking formation with a catch. Now, I did a in-depth tactical breakdown on this, the 4-2-4, so please check that out if this formation interests you. I will say the 4-2-4, despite being pretty barren in the center midfield upon looks, is an absolute potent formation if you use it the right way. As you know, or maybe many of you know, that I use a 5-2-3 currently with the same kind of 2 CM setup, and it works great. Now that's pre-patch. We will have to also see how that changes in post-patch. It may be more important to have a stronger midfield presence, but the 4-2-4, as long as you can get the ball up into that attacking 4, then you are fine in the build-up portion. Now, after you get the ball up to those front 4, it's not over there, because as potent as it is linear, just like it looks on screen. And if all you have is moving the ball to the wingers and looking for a pass into your strikers, it is very easy for a defense to snuff that out. Just move wingback or center back into that passing lane, and you will end up passing it into a defender every time. In order to make this 4-2-4 as dangerous as it can be, you have to be ready to get the ball on the wings, isolate the wingback, and take him on one-on-one to either beat him down the line and serve across, beat him down the line, and then cut back for a finesse shot with your winger, right? And then once you add that in, and it's a little harder to guess for the defense what you're going to do, then you can start getting that ball from the wingers into the striker for the killer touch and shoot, or touch through the hole, dribble through the hole, whatever, and then shoot. Basically, you want to go and practice this in game, because it's not just a given that it's going to be, you're just going to do great in the attack. And then defensively, of course, you have to make sure you will be comfortable defending with just the back 4 and those 2 CMs, pulling them back as needed, because your front 4 will most likely stay all the way up. You can pull your wingers back a bit, but they're realistically not going to cover that much ground to really come and be much of a help defensively. Moving on to a very special 5-back formation, the 5-2-1-2, which I did an in-depth tactical breakdown on this formation. So you could check that video out, and why I say it is special is because it is one of the few formations in UFL where I encourage you to join your wingbacks into the attack. Now, it has a 4-back variation, the 4-1-2-1-2, where instead of an extra center back like you see here, you actually have a CDM. In that version, I do not encourage you to bring your wingbacks into the attack, because in the UFL especially, you need to be ready for the counterattack, and only having 2 center backs as opposed to 3 makes it very, very dangerous to join your wingbacks up and not just get toasted defensively. When you have 3 center backs, even in this case, if your wingbacks are caught up and you get countered, which will happen, you still do have to be very good defensively, and it's going to be a challenge as you look to get your wingbacks recovered and back into position to defend. However, if you can make that work, on the offense, you absolutely have control of the center of the midfield with the two CMs, the cam, and your two strikers. And then you add in the threat from the wings, from both your wingbacks being pushed up. And they do a great job, by the way, especially if you have the right type of players such as Enudogi and Dumfries, who do a great job on the ball. It's absolutely a threat to have them dribbling up the side and then being able to either cross it in, right, or to just alleviate the pressure from the middle sometimes when you need to maybe reset your attack, pushing it all the way out since the opponent's going to have to cover it. Let's say you just never go for crosses, right? It doesn't matter. Once you get that ball out to the wingback, your opponent will not know that. They're going to send out a defender or two to cover you, and then once you get it back in the center, it just leaves that much more of an opening to attack. So this is very dynamic in the attack, and it is, like I said, one of the rare formations where you're bringing your wingbacks up. So, of course, since it's rare, your opponent's not going to be readily able to defend it. They won't have, a game plan based on facing other players, right? So it can definitely be a formation that you can utilize. Just practice it. Make sure the most important part is making sure that you're able to defend while those wingbacks are recovering. See kind of how that feels in game and go from there. But if you're interested, I already did the in-depth breakdown of that video, which will absolutely be viable for the post-patch meta. Another special 5-back formation that, if you've been following my channel, you know this is the formation that I use far and wide the most in the game. It has helped me get to a top world ranking, and as you can see, it only has a 2 CM setup, like I said, in the 4-2-4, which looks pretty barren, but it absolutely works. I will say that L1 triangle switch obviously makes this an even more dangerous formation because you always have that big switch if you need it. So post-patch, not even having that as a threat for your opponent to have to worry about does change things. So I very well may have to change this. I already plan to start the post-patch era with the 4-5-1 and then work out from there. But the 4-5-1 with my settings being my main formation over the 5-2-3. We will see, though. I'm not just going to totally write it off because it is a very dangerous formation. And the reason why it's so dangerous is that I typically in UFL attack with 3 players anyway. I don't really have that 4th player in the attack like I would, for instance, in EAFC. That 4th player, which is one of the 2 center mids, is only pretty much an outlet pass if I need to restart my attack. But why I love this formation so much too is that, speaking of the current meta, it does well to close down that L1 triangle switch while still having cover in the middle in case the opponent then passes the ball from the wing into the center. There is that glitch where you do back-to-back L1 triangles. That's very hard to stop, but the 5-back does the best job at cutting out your opponent's attacks with this current meta. And it could still do a very good job post-patch. We just would have to see, right? The one thing that you're going to want to make sure in the post-patch era is that, just like the 4-2-4 with only 2 CMs, that you're still able to get the ball into your attackers in the build-up. That's the most important part. Once you can get it up to the attackers, well then you can check out my video, the in-depth breakdown on how to set up the attackers to give yourself the best chance of creating scoring opportunities, right? However, if you can't even get the ball up to your attackers, it doesn't matter, right? The build-up for you, it has to be viable. So check that first. If it does work, go to my 5-2-3 in-depth breakdown, and this could be a great formation for you. And now a 3-back system, the 3-1-4-2, which does not line up like it looks like in this picture above where the players are listed. You actually want to look to the left over there with the dots, and that's a better depiction of how it will look in-game. Mainly, the problem is that CDM, despite the picture, is not in front of the 2 CMs. He's just in front of the center backs and just behind those 2 CMs. So really, in the attack, you basically just picture a 4-4-2. That's how you would attack in the exact same way. What this does defensively just takes a wing back away and pushes them into a CDM role, and then it takes the remaining 3 defenders, squeezes them together into a 3 center back setup. So many of you may not think of this as a viable formation, but hear me out. In the post-patch meta, we very well could see a lot of narrow formations. And if we do, this formation could be very good in neutralizing your opponent's attack, just because if your opponent doesn't have wide threats, why keep your wingbacks out there? Instead, add a center defensive midfielder out of one of your back four and then push them together to make a three center back system. Much better at defending, for instance, the 4-1-2-1-2. Even if you face the 5-2-1-2, you do the same thing. You neutralize their attack down the middle of the field with a strong defensive presence. And then, as far as the wing outlets, no different than them having the wing backs to play to in a 5-2-1-2, you would actually have your wing midfielders then as an alternative to exploit their wings. So it could be a viable option either way against narrow formations. Same with the 4-3-1-2. You would just have a strong presence in that center of the park, and you would get more out of that than having wingbacks per se. So it is worth maybe not using from the get-go in the post-patch era. However, keep it in the back of your head. Don't just totally write this formation off. It could become useful. And now the 3-4-1-2, which has the same picture as the 3-1-4-2, except this formation actually does line up in game how it looks on screen here. And that's because that central attacking midfielder is the difference, right? What you do in this formation is take one of your wingbacks, push them up to a cam, squeeze in the other three defenders, they become center backs. That's how I look at it, at least. But in game, you basically would have your three center backs, and then in the attack, it would be just like the 4-4-2, only you add a cam into that attacking scenario, which obviously does make it a stronger formation in the attack. This is one of those formations that could absolutely be used in an all-out attacking scenario. I would say if you like attacking in a 4-4-2 or a two-striker setup, then and you're not worried about the defensive setup of your team, maybe you just need a goal no matter what, so you only are worried about the attack. This could be huge because then you add that extra option as far as the cam goes and give yourself a chance to get back into a game. That's the biggest area where I see that this formation could be slotted in and useful in. Defensively, I would say if you're even thinking about using this as a regular formation, you would have to, already have familiarity with how to utilize three-back systems, right? And then B, if you haven't used three-back systems, you would have to make sure that you have good defensive principles. You are a strong player manually switching defenders, especially considering not only would you have three center backs you have to constantly switch and control, but as far as the pressure from the midfielders, you don't even have a CDM. You would have to really work to pull your CMs back to help so your three center backs don't get stranded. So, long story short, I would keep this only as a possible all-out attacking option. Other than that, I would not recommend using it. And that will conclude our post-patch meta formations video series. It took 4 parts to complete, but now we've gone through every single formation in UFL with the goal of giving you the best chance of pinpointing the formations you want to bring in the post-patch era. All you have to do now is take the formations you've shortlisted, practice them in game, tweak the setup tactically and duties-wise to further fit your game plan, right, your play style, and then you simply wait for the patch and go out and dominate. It's easy as that, right? So I hope this was helpful for you, and keep grinding, keep having fun, and until next time, have a good one.